100 years from now, nobody's going to remember your name. Nobody's going to remember the name of your company. Nobody's going to remember what you did. But if you've made an impact in the world, that's what they'll remember.
Welcome to Design Your Life in Business, the podcast for leaders by BrightMind Consulting Group. We give you the necessary tools to help you become the architect of not just your business, but your life too. I'm your host, Jevon Wooden.
It's going great. I appreciate getting a chance to talk to you today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. You have some interesting commentary for today's discussion. So I look forward to us talking.
Yeah, looking forward to
it. So we'll jump right into it, man. Who are you? Who is Lonnie Buchanan?
Gee whiz, that's a loaded question. So my name's Lonnie Buchanan. I'm the CEO of a company called Obvious Architecture, and we are an organization that works primarily in the healthcare industry. We are a consulting organization around digital transformation, all things digital. We are about empowering companies to excel in technology and to be able then to take that technology over on their own without having to rely on us. And so that's one of our specialties. We go into organizations and we help them move forward from the place where they're at. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do.
Awesome. How did you get into that work, Lonnie?
Oh, so I've been doing this for years. I've always kind of been in IT and in technology, and I spent a lot of years in the electric utility industry and then swapped over to healthcare. And from healthcare, I just kind of fell into it. I got really involved in actually the aspect of trying to make a change in the world. You know, I'm like the last bleeding heart. I'm going to try to save everybody, and so I was able to latch onto some really unique projects throughout my career. And then worked at some rather large organizations, and then moved over into consulting. And so from there, I kind of became the biggest little company that you've never heard of. And so I've been working behind the scenes with a lot of large organizations. And so what we found is there's a lot of organizations that just are so busy in their day-to-day activities. They don't necessarily have enough time to understand or explore new activities or new technologies. And so they bring someone like us in. We can do one-on-one consulting. We have some situations where we're put on retainers, much like a lawyer. I can go on a retainer is for advisory roles. We have different types of architects. We also will implement fractional leadership, CTO, CIO type things. And we also go in specialized projects with what we call dream teams. Dream teams they're like these higher end guys that come together, can evaluate your system, and then we're able to work with you, bring you up to speed on whatever you've wanted to develop, whatever you want to look at, and then turn it over to you. We teach you how to run it. Basically we come in and teach you how to fish. And then we walk away from it, and then we're there if you need us or if you want to do it again. And so that's what happens in a lot of our projects. We get called back to implement and do something new, and we can augment people like that. So that's primarily what we do. And so I've been very fortunate. I've got some really, really good people that's working with me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How do you typically find your client base, or how do they find you?
Believe it or not, they most of the time find me. In the world today, marketing is like completely different, and cold calls, that's out. Mass email, that's out. That's all just a thing of the past. And so people watch like your show, and they may have something that they're trying to figure out, maybe in the realm of AI or interoperability or things along those lines. And I'll get a phone call. I also sit on several committees like HIM, social detriments of health, and so we're working with people trying to improve health equity across the table. And so people have ideas, and they want to get together and figure out whether or not they can make those ideas come real. And so I actually get contacted by a lot or other organizations that's worked with me in the past. Right. And so they bring me in. If somebody, like on your show, if they want to get in touch with me, I have email, phone numbers. You can obviousarchitecture.com, leave a message or call me. There's a phone number there. And if I'm at the other end, I'll pick it up. If not, leave a message, I'll get back with you.
Gotcha.
And so that's really where I come about. We're always looking for, new opportunities. The team keeps growing. And so, people that may be in sales like positions or marketing like positions, we'll work with them. We'll interact with them too. So
Gotcha.
the world is our oyster. But as far as, dedicated direct marketing, most of the time people just get in touch with us.
Gotcha. And how did you come up with the name Obvious Architecture?
So Obvious Architecture comes from an interesting story. Years ago, I was working for Intermountain Healthcare as starting up their architecture program. And as part of a project, I was asked to design a new system. So I designed the new system and I created this big old stack of paper because that's what people like is a bunch of paper. It looks like you did something. So I go in, he was then the CIO, became the chief operating officer later. And I go in and I take this big stack of paper and we had a weekly meeting and I put the big stack of paper down on the desk and I said, here's your answer. Here's the thing you asked me to do. He's like, great, fantastic. He says, I'll take a look at it and I'll get back with you. So a week passes, I go back in for another meeting and I said, hey, did you read that? And he's like, nah, I just didn't get to it again. That's okay. We'll meet again next week. So the next week I went back and I said, did you read it? And he's like, yeah, no, I didn't. So this went on for like a couple of weeks. And finally I go back in and I'm like, you've got to read this. He said, I promise you, I will read this. So I went in the next week and I sat down. I'm like, did you read it? And he goes, yes. And he just slammed the papers down on the desk and he goes, more pictures, less words. And I was like, oh, well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? So once we dropped the paper on the desk, he just looks straight back at me and he goes, more pictures, less words. And so that began the idea of Obvious Architecture from that point. Obvious Architecture is more of a philosophy than a framework. And the idea is basically that we generate a lot of paperwork. We generate a lot of garbage and things that we don't necessarily need to be doing and things, quite frankly, that are useless. We revolve our architecture designs around understanding who are the key players, what are the important objectives that you're trying to do, and how to go about solving those objectives or introducing new technologies or new innovations to help you achieve the goals that you have. And so in doing that, we found that most people go, wow, that was really obvious. Why couldn't I have figured that out on my own? Everybody knows that if you want to validate what you did, you hire a consultant and they basically come in and say, oh yeah, you're correct. So, that's where the name came from.
Awesome. Now that's pretty cool. So earlier you mentioned health equity, right? That you do a lot in the area of health equity. First of all, what does that look like? Because I hear a lot of companies talk about it, but how do you actually engage in it?
Yeah. So basically the concept of health equity is that every person on the planet, and we're not talking about the United States, we're talking about every single individual should have the same rights and access to healthcare and at an equal manner. They should not be separated from the ability to receive healthcare because of race or religion or the amount of wealth they have or where they live or anything like that. And so from a health equity standpoint, what we're striving to do is we're trying to provide people with the technologies in particular, because that's my area, with the technologies that they can use to receive equitable and easy to receive healthcare. We see things that are just basically ridiculous that shouldn't be happening. We live in the United States. And, we're the richest nation in the world and we have everything available to us. Yet I can show you a map of the area of Chicago and I can show you the average lifespans, and they're literally separated by neighborhoods because one neighborhood is richer than the next neighborhood. Well, you know what? Maybe I've reached that age where I can say things, but that's not right. That's just not right. And people should not be denied healthcare because of where they live or because of who they are or because of their beliefs or their views. And so In a health equity standpoint, really what I work on is trying to get technologies in the hands of people that have maybe been denied that in the past, or for whatever reason, maybe they haven't had the availability of it. And so, well, some of the areas that if you go on the website, I write these little blogs and stuff. Right now, I work. We've got a big focus we've been working on is vaccinations and some of the new vaccines that are coming out. And we're finding that things like maternal vaccinations, 20, 30 years ago, if a baby got whooping cough, there were really serious, chances that that baby was not going to survive if it was a newborn. Now we found out that by vaccinating the mother during her pregnancy, she can carry those antibodies over to the child, and the child is basically protected for 6 months to a year from getting whooping cough. And all we've got to do is give a shot that we already have to the mom, So these are no brainers. It's obvious stuff that we're working on. I also am the vice president of a ministry called Light of the World Ministries, where we work in Sierra Leone. And one of the things that we have is we have orphanages and schools over there. Mm-hmm. And I've got these kids over there that are basically in the jungle. And they're not getting any medicine, but they have cell phones in the jungle, and I'm like, well, why can't we get telehealth medicine to them? And why can't we get vaccines to them? In the early 80s, there were a massive amount of children that were dying from polio. And we've seen the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation go in and spend just tons and tons of money on these vaccinations to eradicate polio. And polio is basically 99% eradicated in the world today. And we have malaria vaccines now. Get them to the people that need them. And so that's where I focus on. Is there technologies that help get that there? Is there technologies that help get clinicians connected to the people that need them? We see numbers that are just unbelievable. There's 5 million kids, under the age of 5 that died in 2021. And in most cases, those kids were died through things that we can deal with, or we can treat, or that we can solve. And that's what I'm talking about. These types of things, they're just ridiculous. 47% of all newborns in the world are at risk of death. The numbers are in the billions of people that just basically don't have soap and water in their home.
I love that, Lonnie, because that's something near and dear to me. Growing up in Rochester, New York, growing up in poverty, we see that time and time again. And there was a documentary. It's been out for about a year now, I think, but there's a documentary on Hulu called Aftershock, and it was talking about the disparities between Black mothers dying, the mortality rates between Black mothers and white mothers. And it's all because of what you're talking about. So I love the cause that you have.
Well, I think the big one on everybody's mind right now is AI. Everybody's, it's AI, it's AI. That AI is in the healthcare industry. It's a multi-billion dollar a year thing that we're looking at. There's billions of dollars that are pumping into it, but it's still a small percentage of healthcare itself. We still have a lot of doctors. We still have a lot of issues out there that there's shortages of available clinicians. There's all kinds of shortages. So some of the technologies that we're looking at over the next few years, besides AI, and I'll come back and address AI because everybody wants to hear about AI and everything that's going on there. But some of the areas, that we're talking about is nursing homes. We saw issues in nursing homes during the pandemic. This is basically the first thing. It took all the hits. And as we began to evaluate nursing homes, we understood that there were a lot of things missing there in caregiver areas. And so we're seeing more organizations like Kepler, which is coming in with IoT devices to monitor falls, because there's just not enough people that are reaching them. Bandages, which is a Japanese company now that is working on the massive amount of data that can create individual care plans for each of the people in these nursing homes. We see things like there's a lot of data that's coming out of there. And so there's a company out of Japan called Bandages. And so they're collecting that data and creating optimal care plans for those particular patients. We're seeing a lot of benefit out of that. Nice. There is in behavioral health, there is a lot of movement in this area right now. The pandemic found out that there were Typically, 4 out of 10 people carry some type of mental disease or mental issue, in particular around depression and anxiety. The pandemic drove it through the roof. And so we've got people like Talkspace that are using very large algorithms to put the right clinicians, the right therapist with people. We're also seeing cases like Lumen. Lumen is a new one that's really interesting. They have an AI voice interactive application that people are fairly comfortable with. And what they found out is, in most cases, 4 out of 10 people that are employees typically periodically need some type of IEP, but they don't use it. It's a very, very small percentage of people that use it. Well, they put this AI just to ask them questions and just to kind of converse with them. And they had 47% of the people said, yeah, we would definitely use this. And, they found an incredible amount of benefit out of that. So we're seeing things come from that area. Probably the biggest thing that you've seen as far as technology goes is the new vaccinations with the messenger RNA. Basically, these are the type of vaccines that are manufactured, and we're able to discover and get to those much, much quicker. So that we're seeing a lot of advances. This is where we're seeing advances. RSV is a respiratory disease most little kids get, but in a small percentage, it can be very, very dangerous. So Pfizer is already moving forward with human trials on an RSV vaccine that came about in exactly the same way. You're seeing new technologies as far as like the 5G and, better communications, broadband communications into rural areas, things along those lines. So those are some of the more common areas of health technology that you're seeing come up. Now, obviously, the one that everybody's got on the mind is AI. What's going on in AI? And there are some really impressive things going on in AI. For example, I talked about Lumen. Lumen's an AI team. Glass AI is another one. They're doing some incredible stuff with diagnoses. Every day, AI is moving exponentially at this point. We've kind of grown through all the years of analytics and to get to this particular point. And so AI is the one that's making the difference because people, we're looking at a massive shortage of people in the healthcare industry. And so anytime that we can begin to lift that burden, that's what we're trying to do. If I can get, image quality from a radiologist or a radiology AI type machine that has, a 95% accuracy rate on first pass, that's pretty darn good.
Absolutely.
I was just this morning finding out that there is some new cancer detection AI tools that are coming out. What used to take 3 weeks from a physical check to see if the cells are cancerous now can be done in 3 minutes. One of the cool ones, I really enjoy this one is I did a blog on this one the other day. Everybody hates to get a shot, right? I mean, nobody wants to get a shot. And so there's advances now in bandages. They started looking at how things like mosquitoes and stuff like that can actually bite you without you knowing it. And so they evaluated the way that they were able to penetrate the skin at certain angles and things along those lines. And so now we're starting to see bandages that can apply medication over a period of time. Wow. And it's non-invasive and it's non-painful. So now we can begin to apply vaccines to small children through a bandage. There's a new set of sutures that just recently come out now that they can put proteins as markers in there that will detect whether or not there's infection, and then they can release medication through that. And they're biodegradable sutures too. So those are some big areas. But the talk of the town is AI. There's a lot of money out there, and people are excited about it. But the problem that we see is a lot of people don't really understand it. A lot of hype. And, for my AI fans out there, You guys know that when we evaluate an LLM or a large language model, we're always checking to see how accurate it is, because the models are trained to act and think like human beings. And so they create these things called hallucinations that you have to be very, very careful of. There's a recent open source model called Falcon. I was just testing it the other day, and it failed some basic math, and well, you know, if you're going to have a medical AI taking a look at you, you don't want it to fail basic math,
Right.
Bard is the big one from Google right now. You probably hear a lot of stuff going on with Bard. Well, one of the tests that they put it through was to have it write an economic paper. And it wrote this massive economic paper, and it cited like 5 or 6 books, that it found to be very, very decisive in creating the paper. Well, when they went and to look up the books didn't exist. Bard created those books itself.
Oh, wow.
And so it was that way. My own examples is I have several models that I run right now. And one of my first ones was, I'll always kind of go, hello, when it comes back, it goes, hello. And I asked it what its name was, and it told me its name. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. You have a name. All right. And I said, well, what do you do for a living? And it's like, well, I work in an ER. And I'm like, you work in an ER? And it's like, yeah. And I said, really? And it said, yeah. And I have a side time hustle. I write articles for magazines. And I'm like, wow. And it said it was married and it had kids and all this. Well, it gave me, I said, give me some of those articles. And it gave me like 3 articles, and I went and looked up, and they didn't exist. So those are some of the things, because now we're talking about taking your data, Jevon, and we're talking about putting it into these machines that operate and function much like a black box, where you put something in, you get something out. And so what we're really, really concerned in the AI community right now is being able to put governance in place. And then we also need to put some type of ethics in place. There's certain things that we can do, but we also need these systems that are much faster than we think, that continually go and are learning from themselves to be able to check. So just like every time that there's a problem, there's an organization that comes in and tries to solve that problem. We're starting to see organizations come forward and do this.
Yeah, we see it all the time, man. And it's like, it's really ridiculous, and I'm glad that you're focusing on it and that we're having this conversation here to bring light to it. And you had mentioned technology, right? That you leverage technology to get that health equity and do what you can on that side. So what are some of the new technologies that you're leveraging that's making a difference when it comes to health equity?
Starting to see, more and more uses around things that we have in our toolbox already that we can leverage. So to address some of the fears that people have, we're learning that blockchain may be a very, very good way for us to provide governance. And so this is one of the areas where the larger organizations are a little bit worried, and the open source organizations are kind of jumping in there. Because if you're a large organization and you've trained your model, you spent millions and millions of dollars to train your model, you don't really want to give up where all the information came from. And so your competitor can get that. And so that's creating a lot of angst. And if we can create the ability for governance to be modularized in such a way, then everybody can leverage that and can use that. The other thing is a protection of your healthcare data. This is a very touchy situation, but in order for healthcare AI to function correctly, it has to have some type of data to understand, to draw those correlations between it. And then, of course, there's a lot of good colleges that are have just throwing kids at this and coming up with all kinds of really great ideas. And probably some of the ones I'm seeing right now is around some of these ethics and morality checkers, which are basically little AIs or little APIs that exit out, and they'll run certain checks against large language models to ensure that they're keeping that in check. But we are going to have to put some regulations in place. I can't, in good knowing, say, oh, well, I just tested this across the internet and it's going to give you, the best, recommendations for your healthcare. The EU last week passed some new regulations around that. And then the Japanese are looking at some different things. Probably one of the scariest things that I saw coming out of that is under the new EU regulations, none of the LLMs will pass. So you're going to have to sign, in order to use your data, you're going to have to sign a piece of paper for them to use it. And Before the real media explosion on AI, we were working with some teams and stuff around like your cookies, or when you go to a website and it downloads, it says, hey, I'm running some cookies, or I'm running some analytics, and things along those lines. There are some lawsuits that are in place right now that are starting to come to court, that they collect enough information about you that I can put it back together and actually breach your privacy. So these are big deals that are going to have to be addressed as we go. But fortunately, since the last time I talked on this subject, which was with somebody probably about a month ago, I've seen an explosion of 3 or 4 companies come to the forefront to start addressing these. So we're seeing, just new startups left and right.
That's pretty awesome. So if I'm not a techie, I have no interest in learning LLMs or AI or machine learning or any of this stuff, what could I do to support health equity projects?
I think from the health equity standpoint is we're all in this together, and I think that there's always the first thing is getting the information out. And making sure that people understand that there are things available to them, and that there are organizations that are working toward providing better health equity and things along those lines. I think probably the first thing is never say no. I think that a lot of people have this concept of just rolling over. In my company, Obvious Architecture, we even have a standpoint that says if somebody comes to us with an idea that's really that good, and we really think it's going to make a difference in the world that big, we'll build it for free. We'll do that. We'll, obviously we probably want some, stake in the game or something like that, but we're that committed to making changes in the world along those lines. The other thing is, we live in a world where we hide behind our computer. When I first got started, the first really large healthcare, modern healthcare thing that I designed from scratch was a telehealth program. And I remember speaking at a conference, and I said, I'm really sorry, because in the beginning of my career, I spent a lot of time writing code and separating you from the world. And what I found is that I need you in the world. Telehealth and teleprograms actually put a person back in place. And it's just like with AI, AI is going to be an enhancer, but it's not going to reduce the human contact. And we really need to begin to get worried about the people that are around us. And we need to be able to make a stand. We need to be able to say, I'm going to make a difference in the world. And I do care about the people around me because, we know how the world works. The thing that whatever they're going through could happen to you tomorrow. And so I think that's the first thing. We just need to get really a lot better at playing nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Show some compassion.
Yeah.
I think we lost compassion somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that, Lonnie. So we're going to shift to our by design segment, where I ask every guest the same 3 questions. Are you ready?
Okay, let's try it. Yeah.
All right, let's roll. I mean, you've talked about a lot harder things than this, so I know you got it. What has been the hardest part about designing a life and business you don't need a vacation from?
Probably the hardest thing for me was when I started really getting into business. I kind of carried this mindset of my past history of the negative things that happened to me. And I really said, I don't want that to happen moving forward, either to my clients or the people that are working with me. And so what I found was, like I said, maybe I'm just kind of a sad kind of guy, but it was the empathy for everyone around me. And that was probably the hardest thing, is making sure that the client was getting the best thing that they could possibly get for what they wanted to do, but also making sure that the people that were working with me and around me were also being taken care of. And that extends all the way into their families and things along those lines. So I think the hardest thing was all of a sudden, I went from being, this guy who just did his own thing to being this guy. It felt like he had all these family members he had to worry about. So that was probably my toughest thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, because you have 2 things, right? You're doing hard work, technical, but it's hard work, and then also you're a service business, so you kind of have that where you want to give your best and all, but you got to make sure that you and your team are also good, because you want to make sure you show up on both ends. So that's I get that.
And you got to take care of your own family too. got a family
Absolutely.
home too. And, when you turn the computer off there, you've got to be able to take care of the situations that are going on there.
Absolutely. 100%. Second question. What is the best lesson you've learned on your entrepreneurial journey?
I would say that never be surprised where an opportunity comes from. I think that new business leaders are so focused and so narrow-minded in what they do. I think you need to have an objective. I think you need to have a mission statement. I think you need to have a vision statement and things along those lines. But new opportunities come up all over the place. If we were having this conversation a year ago and I said, Jevon, you need to dump some money into OpenAI while you got the chance or something like that, you go, you're nuts. You're crazy, and all of a sudden it explodes. And now there's all this money going into that. Well, there's a lot more technologies that are setting out there that are going to come up to speed and that are going to hit us really, really fast, that a lot of organizations are failing to recognize, and it will hit them, out of left field. We are growing from an economy in new areas that we've never touched before at an exponential rate. Those that adhere to the old ways are going to be left behind. Somebody says the other day that doctors are not going to be left behind. It's just that doctors who don't use the technology are not going to be used. If you go back in history, look at the turn of the history, how many people that were in the ice cutting business, where they would go on a lake and cut blocks of ice out, continued that business. That's not a very profitable business anymore. And new companies sprung up around refrigeration. Well, we're seeing a large shift in technology and a large shift. And that's where we come in is because we try to help guide you into the next realm, the next age, based on what you want to do and what your objectives are.
Absolutely. So third question is, what are 3 tools or tips you'd recommend when scaling a business?
Let the smart people do what they know how to do. That's number 1. Number 2, always appreciate those around you and those that you are working with. And number 3, always remember that 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember your name. Nobody's going to remember the name of your company. Nobody's going to remember what you did. But if you've made an impact in the world, that's what they'll remember. And so you need to work toward making an impact in the world.
Love it. Lonnie, it's been amazing. You said it earlier, but how can everyone get in touch with you?
Yeah. So obviousarchitecture.com. There's a phone number on there, or you can email me. You can email me directly at lonnie.buchanan@obviousarchitecture.com. And I get all those emails. I get back to them as soon as I can. 100% human interaction. Okay. And if you have a project or a plan or just something you're really, really passionate about, reach out to me and, we'll talk about it, or I'll put one of my guys on it and we'll take a look at it.
Love it. Love it. I appreciate all the knowledge. You definitely opened my eyes to some new tech, and I'm glad to hear all these things are coming up when it comes to health equity. So I appreciate this conversation. Loved it. I'm gonna have to go back and listen myself, but thank you so much. And designers, remember to keep ascending. I'll see you soon, Lonnie.
Okay. Thanks, Jevon.
Thank you. Design Your Life in Business, the podcast for leaders, is brought to you by BrightMind Consulting Group. To find out more about BrightMind Consulting Group and how you can become the best leader possible, visit brightmindconsultinggroup.com. Make sure you search for Design Your Life in Business on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at BrightMind Consulting Group, we cannot thank you enough for listening.